smooth, metallic, and etched with unknown markings and symbols. The object now known as the Buga Sphere has become the center of a growing mystery.
It's certainly real. It's using an energy field, a type of anti-gravity effect.
An ancient metallic orb that might be older than the pyramids and possibly smarter. The Buga Sphere set off alarms and headlines across the world. But now, the lab report backing its age is falling apart, and someone even tried to steal it in broad daylight. Is this a lost piece of ancient tech, or the most elaborate UFO hoax yet? Join us as we expose the truth behind the Buga Sphere and the red flags no one saw coming. The age claim and Greer's announcement. Let's start with the claim that detonated the conversation. Dr. Stephen Greer publicly stated that resin recovered from the Buga Sphere is more than 12,500 years old, squarely in the last ice age. The number matters. 12,500 doesn't just sound old. It drags the object into the realm of Younger Dryas timelines, ancient civilization debates, and every "how did they build it?" argument surrounding megaliths. Greer's framing implicitly invites a leap. If the sphere is that ancient and shows signs of advanced engineering, then maybe similar technology once operated on Earth and could even intersect with mysteries like the pyramids. That's why people reacted so strongly, because the age claim acts like a master key for a dozen long-running narratives. Greer's credibility in parts of the UFO community amplified that impact. Many viewers describe him as someone they warm to, a figure who, regardless of disagreements, has worked to put witnesses and documents on the record. So when he posts that a mainstream laboratory produced a hard scientific date, it sounds like the kind of data point believers have been waiting for. Instrumental evidence instead of anecdotes. According to the circulated document, the work was done at the University of Georgia's Center for Applied Isotope Studies, with the radiocarbon report dated September 19, 2025. The sample, we're told, was received on September 12th and turned around in roughly a week. 7 days from intake to reported result. Fast enough to feel urgent, slow enough to feel plausible to non-specialists. The shockwave wasn't just that an old date existed, but that the date came from organic resin associated with a metal sphere. Organic matter is what you date with radiocarbon. Metals aren't. So the story instantly had contours that felt science to a general audience. A carbon-bearing resin adhered to, embedded in, or otherwise associated with the object's structure. That pairing, ancient organics plus engineered-looking metal, was catnip for speculation. If it's truly ice age old and bound up with an obviously machined artifact, then the conversation isn't, are there UAPs now? But who was machining complex objects 12 millennia ago? Greer's announcement also touched a raw nerve created by the current media environment. Viewers are already exhausted by AI-generated UFO evidence and debunks that arrive days later. Many want a big claim they can trust. Greer's post looked like that. A named lab, a specific date, and numbers with error bars. Everything that says, "This is how science talks." Understandably, some channels and commenters sprinted ahead, connecting the sphere's purported physics to pyramid construction theories and the idea of multiple spheres coordinating to generate effects like crop circles. You can hear the gears turning, ancient orbs, subtle fields, acoustic resonance. Maybe the old stories were pointing at a technology we're only now rediscovering. But the same elements that made the claim potent also made it fragile. A single lab attribution concentrates the entire argument into one document. If that document is ironclad, the story stands taller. If it's messy, the whole edifice wobbles. And once people started reading the text line by line, the conversation shifted from 12,560 years to, wait, what exactly does this report say? The community's trust calculus flipped. The promise of a definitive age morphed into an audit of language, methods, and chain of custody. In other words, Greer's announcement raised the stakes for everyone. If the dating holds up under scrutiny, it's a landmark. If it doesn't, It doesn't just bruise one claim, it risks collateral credibility damage within a community already battling hoaxes, technical features, and behaviors. The Buga Sphere is consistently described as a seamless metallic orb, roughly basketball-sized, showing no welds or joints. X-ray and imaging work, cited by researchers such as José Luis Velázquez, describe 3 concentric metal-like layers with multiple microspheres inside, 9 in some reports. The cross-section imagery allegedly reveals a central nucleus or chip surrounded by nested structures, like a compacted multi-layer device rather than a simple shell. One of the most attention-grabbing claims involves embedded fiber optic-like filaments, hair-thin strands molded directly into the metal matrix, rather than bundled as conventional cabling. Advocates say this suggests a distributed optical pathway capable of routing signals within the structure without classic wiring harnesses. The rhetorical punchline is that the object may both emit and receive coded signals, functioning as a probe or relay with internal photonic channels instead of copper conductors. That image, optical nerves fused into metal, maps neatly onto popular ideas of post-silicon architectures. Next comes propulsion and field effects. Supporters assert the sphere exhibits anti-gravitic behavior, operating without hot exhaust, moving parts, or detectable radioactivity. Engineers quoted in the coverage suggest that electromagnetic field manipulation is the working principle. Fields that couple to the environment to generate lift and control, thereby sidestepping conventional thrust. If true, you'd expect interference with electronics, and that's exactly what's claimed. Low-frequency emissions, repeating electrical pulses, and local disruptions to nearby devices. Some accounts even say the signal patterns mirror signatures attributed, rightly or wrongly, to alleged alien implants, once studied by Dr. Roger Leah, commonly spelled Lear. The responsive-to-stimulus thread adds a behavioral twist. There are reports that the sphere reacts to specific audio frequencies, with viral clips purporting that Sanskrit Vedic chants produce measurable changes in vibration intensity. Even if you bracket the spiritual angle, the acoustic notion is testable. Resonant structures often exhibit frequency-dependent responses. Whether that's what's happening here is unproven, but the claim fuels the sense that the device isn't inert, it's interactive. Environmental effects round out the dossier. The landing site is said to have experienced complete grass and soil die-off, with no regrowth for months, yet no ionizing radiation has reportedly been detected. One explanation proposed in media segments is a strong, decaying ionized field, or an invisible energy that dehydrated the ground by pulling moisture. Separately, handlers report weight changes over time. Numbers like 16, 20, then 22 pounds, as if the object can modulate inertia or effective mass at rest. That single detail, if verified under controlled conditions, would be extraordinary. If not, it's an easy place for error to creep in, different scales, orientations, or handling protocols. Finally, lab notes referenced in discussion threads include anomalous magnetic behavior reported by a UNM lab, invoked to support the exotic propulsion narrative. From a materials standpoint, exotic magnetism invites hypotheses, engineered metastructures, unusual alloys, or composite domain effects. From a skeptic's standpoint, magnet oddities can also appear with mundane ferromagnetics in poorly controlled setups. Either way, magnetic anomalies dovetail with the broader claim set. Optics inside the shell, electromagnetic fields outside it, and a device that acts less like a sculpture and more like an engineered system. The technical portrait isn't one big claim. It's a stack of specific assertions: structure, function, behavior, and environment. Anyone could be wrong. But if even a subset holds up in independent, blinded tests, the object becomes a genuinely novel piece of hardware rather than a conversation piece. Theories echo past cases. With the claimed observations in hand, theorists and commentators began mapping the sphere onto existing lore and speculative physics. The most immediate cultural parallel is the Betz sphere from the 1970s, a polished metal ball said to roll against gravity, hum, and react to sound. Whether the Betz story holds water is a separate debate, but the resemblance primed modern audiences to see Buga as a recurrence, another seamless orb with odd dynamics and a personality of sorts. From there, hypotheses fan out. One cluster treats the sphere as an autonomous probe, a compact scout that harvests data, relays signals, and leverages field manipulation to loft, pivot, and brake without jets. In this view, internal microspheres aren't decorative. They're functional modules, capacitive nodes, resonant masses, or optical cavities that couple to a master controller at the center. The outer engravings, meanwhile, are read as labeling or calibration marks, akin to fiducials on precision instruments rather than artful etching. A second cluster leans into ancient technology narratives. If the resin dating is accurate at approximately 12.5 thousand years ago, some argue the sphere may belong to a technological horizon we haven't acknowledged. A pocket of high craft that predated the familiar march from flint to bronze to silicon. This line doesn't require space aliens. It simply posits a lost lineage of engineering. Within this frame, once popular ideas about acoustics and resonance at megalithic sites get repurposed. Maybe assemblies of such orbs generated controlled fields to shape stone logistics, ground consolidation, or quarry transport. It's a romantic hypothesis, but not impossible to test if we had more than one sphere, and a controlled way to energize them. A third cluster is unabashedly frontier physics. Here, the touchstone is work like a unified framework for the Buga Sphere, quantitative validation of a negative mass model governed by topotemporal physics by P. Morsillo. In that model, internal structures create a negative mass effect, not true negative mass in the general relativity sense, but an effective reduction of inertia reported as high as 81%. The same framework claims a persistent approximately 100-watt cooling effect, explained as energy exchange with a topotemporal substrate, a fancy way of saying the device trades heat for momentum changes by interacting with spacetime's topology. The paper invokes an axiom of topotemporal reality, positing that objects can exploit fractal-like time-space structures to reduce the cost of motion. It's bold, and whether it's right is a matter for peer review, but it provides a scaffold that some enthusiasts prefer to hand-wave anti-gravity. Finally, there's the systems engineering angle. If the filaments are optical, if the microspheres act as resonators, and if the outer shell supports field gradients, then the sphere might be a unified mechatronic package optimized for minimal moving parts and maximal robustness. This resolves several narrative puzzles. Why seamless? To prevent mechanical weaknesses. Why optical pathways? To avoid EMI issues inside an object that generates fields externally. Why microspheres? To tune resonances across multiple frequencies and modes. Each theory has a failure mode. Probes require data paths we can detect and decode. Ancient tech narratives must bridge from myth to measurements without cherry-picking. Frontier physics needs replications, not just math. Engineering conjectures demand tear-down-level validation, but the usefulness of theory isn't that it's right on day one, it's that it generates tests. The better the model, the more precise the experiment. That's where this conversation needs to go, from captivating sketches to protocols that can kill or confirm ideas cleanly. Science calls for rigor. Enter Dr. Julia Mossbridge, physicist, researcher, and a consistent voice for methodological discipline. Her position is straightforward. The sphere looks human-made, not because she can identify the shop that milled it, but because the overall gestalt, the engravings, the tidy layering, the apparent designed interior resonates with advanced art or engineering rather than an alien signature. Her counsel: stop proclaiming anomalies and bring the object to independent groups known for rigorous open methods. teams like the Galileo Project or the Scientific Coalition for UAP Studies. Moss Bridge also situates the sphere in a larger reality. Humans are confronting limits to control. We're used to feeling mastery over our tools and narratives. When something arrives that doesn't fit, the instinct is either to mythologize it or debunk it instantly. Both can be mistakes. The antidote is process. Documented chain of custody, pre-registered test plans, and open data sets that let multiple groups analyze the same raw signals, images, and materials. Her attitude isn't anti-mystery. It's pro-reliability. Keep your mind open and your methods tighter. This stance aligns with what AARO and NASA have emphasized in recent years. Most UAPs resolve into balloons, birds, aircraft, satellites, or glare, and the point of investigation is safety and identification, not ontological theatrics. That doesn't rule out the unusual. It just warns against the default narrative that every unknown is a breakthrough. When the government's anomaly office says, "We have no convincing evidence of extraterrestrial origin for cases reviewed," they're reminding us that misidentification dominates the base rate. Applied to Buga, the implications are clear. If the sphere truly houses optical filaments, that's testable. Pull fiber, map refractive indices, and demonstrate carrier modulation. If it emits low-frequency signals, log the spectrum in a Faraday-controlled environment and publish the raw IQ data. If it responds to chance, do frequency-swept acoustic excitation with accelerometers and laser vibrometry, blind the operator, and see if Sanskrit differs from tone bursts once you control for frequency content. If the ground dies, soil cores can be analyzed for salinity, hydrocarbons, heavy metals, and dehydration markers. Moss Bridge's art project hypothesis is often caricatured, but it's a serious null model. High-end artists and fabricators can produce seamless shells, engravings, and mesmerizing internal structures. Some sculptures integrate electronics and intentional EM behavior. The null model doesn't say case closed. It says, here's a non-exotic explanation that fits a lot of surface features. Dislodge it with better data. That's how science works. You try to kill your favorite idea, not cradle it. She also raises a governance question. International handling. The object surfaced in Colombia, was discussed in Mexico, and is analyzed across borders. Who authorizes destructive testing? Who ensures samples aren't swapped or contaminated? Without agreed protocols, even good results invite skepticism. The fix isn't complicated. Custody logs, tamper-evident seals, redundant sampling, and mirrored testing at multiple independent labs with pre-registered methods. In short, Moss Bridge's contribution isn't a vibe, it's a playbook. Treat the sphere like any high-claims device in medicine or physics, blind where you can, calibrate everything, and publish enough raw data that critics can rerun your math. That's not cynicism. That's the only way a mystery survives contact with scrutiny and emerges as knowledge, the fragile evidence. When Dr. Stephen Greer released the radiocarbon dating report of the Buga Sphere resin, it should have been a landmark moment. Here, finally, was a mainstream laboratory, the University of Georgia's Center for Applied Isotope Studies, delivering a hard number, more than 12,500 years old. For Greer's supporters, this was the missing piece of legitimacy, the smoking gun that could connect the mysterious orb to Ice Age timelines and possibly to forgotten chapters of human history. But within days, the glow dimmed. People started reading the document line by line, and the shine came off fast. Typos jumped out. Technology in a header, and phrases like, treated in ultrasound bath during 30 minutes at the room temperature. Amateurish wording isn't what you expect from a world-class isotopes lab. That might seem like nitpicking, but in science, language precision matters. A small slip in terminology can be enough to suggest the report didn't actually come from where it claimed. Then came the bigger issues. The report described the sample as foraminifera, a kind of microscopic marine organism with calcium carbonate shells. That makes sense for ocean sediment, but not for resin scraped off a metallic sphere. Was this a copy-paste from another template, a lazy placeholder, or worse, a sign the report wasn't genuine at all? Other details didn't line up either. The report used the outdated Libby half-life of 5,568 years for radiocarbon dating instead of the modern Cambridge value of 5,730. It listed measurements of oxygen isotopes, which are standard for water or carbonates but irrelevant for resin. And while it gave an uncalibrated radiocarbon age of 12,560 years plus or minus 30, it didn't provide the expected calibration step, where that number is converted into a calendar date using the current IntCal 20 curve. For professional labs, calibration isn't optional, it's part of the process. On their own, each problem might be explained away as a typo, a formatting quirk, or a rushed write-up. But stacked together, they painted a troubling picture. Was this really a lab report, or was it a Frankenstein of borrowed jargon meant to look scientific to the casual reader? That question sparked a deeper crisis. What does it mean if Greer, one of the most trusted figures in UFO research, either circulated a sloppy document without checking or endorsed something fake? In a community already drowning in AI hoaxes, doctored videos, and internet fakes, the last thing believers wanted was to find that one of their most credible voices might have been fooled, or worse, reckless. The impact on Greer's reputation was immediate. For years, even skeptics who disagreed with him respected his passion and persistence. But this episode introduced doubt. Was Greer so eager to validate the Buga Sphere that he skipped basic vetting? Did he knowingly post a questionable report because the headline was too good to resist? Or was he misled by someone upstream who handed him a forged document dressed in scientific clothing? None of those answers is flattering. But the truth matters because credibility is the only real currency in ufology. It also raised a broader lesson for the field. Evidence this fragile cannot carry the weight of extraordinary claims. One shaky PDF should never be the pillar on which an entire timeline, the last ice age, pyramids, ancient probes, is built. That's why skeptics like Dr. Julia Mossbridge insist on handing anomalies over to groups like the Galileo Project. It's not cynicism, it's protection. If the data is real, it will survive professional scrutiny. If it isn't, better to find out sooner than let a community invest its hopes in a house of cards. In the end, the red flags in the radiocarbon report weren't just about carbon isotopes or formatting errors. They were about trust. The UFO world is a patchwork of believers, skeptics, opportunists, and hoaxers. Every time a major figure circulates questionable evidence, it muddies the waters for everyone else who is genuinely trying to sort fact from fantasy. And when a claim as dramatic as 12,500 years old rests on a document riddled with inconsistencies, the burden isn't on critics to explain the typos. It's on the claimant to produce airtight, verifiable proof. That didn't happen here. Instead, a potential breakthrough turned into another cautionary tale. In the UFO world, the more extraordinary the evidence looks, the more carefully you have to check the fine print. Secrets swirl around the sphere. The Buga Sphere hasn't just been a scientific puzzle. Around it swirls a storm of secrecy, theft attempts, suspicious offers, and bizarre claims that make it feel less like an artifact under study and more like the centerpiece of a global tug-of-war. From the beginning, control of the object has been contested. According to reports, men disguised as police officers tried to steal the sphere from a secure vault in Mexico during its analysis. This wasn't a prank. This was an organized attempt to seize the orb under the cover of authority. The attempt failed, but the fact that it happened at all raised alarms. If the sphere were just a curiosity, why go to such lengths? Offers soon surfaced from Spain and Brazil, with groups allegedly reaching out to obtain the object. One faction even claimed prior ownership, asserting they had already attempted reverse engineering on a similar device. If that statement holds any truth, it suggests either the Buga Sphere isn't unique, or its story is tangled with hidden histories and private experiments. Each new claim deepens the mystery and makes the chain of custody harder to verify. Inside the labs, the findings have been just as unsettling. At a UNAM-hosted press conference organized by Jaime Maussan, researchers Carlos Munoz and Rodolfo Garrido described microscopic scans revealing a central chip surrounded by 18 microspheres encased within 3 metallic layers. That description echoed what civilians and early researchers had already reported: strange internal architecture without seams or welds. Garrido added that the sphere seemed to grow heavier over time, recorded at 16, then 20, then 22 pounds. How could a static object change its own weight? One theory floated was that it manipulated gravitational forces as part of its design. The sphere's environmental effects also added fuel to the fire. The ground where it landed in Colombia reportedly saw complete grass and soil die off, with no regrowth months later. Scientists detected no radiation, but Garrido speculated that a decaying ionized field, or invisible energy, might have extracted moisture from the area. One of the original discoverers even feared the object could make him ill if he stayed too close, worried about hidden health risks from its unknown energy field. Then came the viral explosion. Videos spread online showing the sphere allegedly responding to Sanskrit chants and Vedic mantras. Observers recorded changes in vibration intensity as people recited ancient verses, framing it as if the object were alive or spiritually attuned. Whether coincidence, staged performance, or genuine interaction, the clips cemented the Buga Sphere as not just a machine, but a cultural phenomenon. It became a symbol equally claimed by engineers, spiritualists, and conspiracy theorists. Of course, not everyone was convinced. Dr. Julia Mossbridge, physicist at the University of San Diego and founder of the Institute for Love and Time, dismissed the exotic interpretations. To her, the object looked human-made, perhaps an elaborate art project. She cautioned that people should resist rushing to call anomalies alien before proper vetting, recommending groups like the Galileo Project for serious analysis. Meanwhile, official channels remained quiet. NASA's 2023 UAP report and the Pentagon's All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office had already concluded that most unexplained aerial phenomena turn out to be balloons, satellites, or birds. Neither body has confirmed extraterrestrial origins in any case they've studied. The silence around the Buga Sphere reinforces the divide. To believers, it proves governments are withholding. To skeptics, it's evidence the case hasn't passed basic credibility tests. Whatever the sphere ultimately proves to be, ancient relic, alien probe, or sophisticated art, it has already revealed one truth. Mysteries don't just attract attention, they attract hidden hands. And when those hands fight for control, the object itself risks becoming secondary to the drama swirling around it. Next steps require oversight. Reports describe an attempted theft in Mexico by individuals disguised as police, targeting a vault where the sphere was being analyzed. Whether botched heist or exaggerated scare, the claim carries implications. If bad actors want the object, it's either valuable hardware or valuable narrative capital, or both. There were also offers from Spain and Brazil, and even a group claiming prior ownership after reverse engineering, which, if true, throws provenance into chaos. Every unverified handoff expands the possibility of contamination, component swaps, or simple confusion about which sphere is under discussion at any given time. On the research side, multiple updates reference UNAM-linked examinations and a Maussan-hosted presser with Carlos Munoz and Rodolfo Garrido, where they discussed internal microscopy, a central chip, and a set of 18 microspheres within 3 layers. Whatever one thinks of those claims, this is the juncture where governance matters. A high claims object needs parallel, independent analyses, not serial, personality-driven pressers. The fix is not glamorous. Cut multiple subsamples under chain of custody, lock them in tamper-evident containers, assign them to separate labs with pre-registered protocols, and require simultaneous publication of raw. Clarity about destructive testing is crucial. Everyone wants answers. Few want to see the artifact drilled or cut. But to resolve metallurgy, optics, and organics, you need cross-sections, thin sections, and polished mounts. That's acceptable if agreed upon by the custodial authority, ideally with the country of discovery, Colombia, in a leading role, and formal observers from any collaborating institutions. A practical path. Produce a digital twin first. CT scans, photogrammetry, high-res surface maps, so any invasive work is planned and minimal. On the signals front, establish a blind testing consortium. Lock the sphere in a shielded chamber at a neutral site. Let independent teams schedule RF sweeps, magnetometry, and acoustic excitation with the owner absent. Pre-register the frequency bands, sensor placements, and analysis pipelines. Publish raw IQ data and time-stamped logs so third parties can rerun the transforms. If the Sanskrit response survives those controls, it will show up as frequency-specific energy coupling, not as a cultural preference. As for the radiocarbon question, stop arguing over screenshots. If resin exists, split it 3 ways. Kai's another North American lab and a European lab, each operating under its own SOPs. Demand matching case numbers, official sign-off from a lab manager, explicit IntCal 20 calibrations, full Delta 13C reporting, and a complete description of pre-treatment. If this is an art project, robust testing will reveal machining signatures, conventional alloys, and decorative filaments. If it's advanced human tech, we'll find modern materials, encodings, and firmware telltales. If it's neither, the oddities will persist under scrutiny, and the object will graduate from internet legend to a legitimate scientific problem. Thanks for watching. If you found this video eye-opening, hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives. Got thoughts on the Buga Sphere? Drop them in the comments. We read them all. Stay curious, stay sharp, and we'll catch you in the next one. Keep questioning everything.